seconds.
Battleground number 2 will be on Dragonshire. Simplicity opting for first pick. There are 3 battlegrounds they love to pick Dreadnought: Tomb, Towers, and Volskaya. Volskaya was banned by Team Freedom, so depending on where we go next, if Simplicity does get a chance to pick down the road, maybe we'll see Towers, but for now it's on Dragonshire. There are some tricky things out there. There's been rumors for a while, and they said, please don't say anything. But damage reduction stacks, and there are certain combos in the game
That are insane.
And
that was one of them, Tyrande plus Leo.
It's pretty wild to think about. Test it out for yourself. Let us know. It's really only in a coordinated environment. It helps in every step of the way, depending on enemy compositions, who you're playing against, how to set up. But when you can stack them as a team, it's pretty terrifying, because you're like, oh, that's nice. Those are really good abilities, but the numbers, they look tiny. Like, that's cute.
It's reverse armor, you know?
Yeah.
It's rather than build up my tank to tank that much damage, I'm just going to remove the damage from the other side of the battlefield. It's the exact same trade-off, though. And not exact same. There are, for anybody who's going to be nitpicky, I know there are technically qualms that you can be like, well, this is going to interact this way if you adjust it, but overall speaking, you can just look at it as, that's 90% armor to my entire team, at least from that character's perspective.
So it's like having Urel.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if we see the adaptation in drafts here. Muradin for Team Freedom has been when they've looked their best lately, Dreadnought. This was the map where they started to turn their season into that big bright spot where we knew Team Freedom is one of North America's best. It was what they used in their run at the Western Clash for the best performing North American team. The Tyrande was picked up, the Johanna in response by Simplicity. We're on opposite sides now. Is Simplicity willing to first pick into that, and will we see the same type of counterplay?
I'll say this, if I'm on Tomb of the Spider Queen compared to Dragonshire, I look at Dragonshire as way more Tyrande-oriented battleground than Tomb of the Spider Queen. Even though in the past that was kind of the opposite of a statement, you'd look at Tomb as a little bit, you know, kind of more incentivized, purely based on the 2v2 skirmishing capabilities and having the opportunity to get auto-attack resets is way higher chances on Dragonshire. There's very rarely a full 5-on-5 kind of commitment, and that isolation to the offlane and the kill potential and crowd control she provides. It's kind of, you know, like when you have Karzim plus a range on bottom, you go, yeah, we can't move up, they're going to kill us. Again, Tyrande is the support that makes that happen.
Well, this battleground brings up that mid lane dynamic of who's flexing to that mid lane. If you have a Johanna, she can be that supplemental wave clear. But then I look at a team like Team Freedom, and I see that the amount of Phoenix games that we've gotten from Yoda, the Jaina potentially, even the Tassadar, things like that do excellent to move to that mid lane. That's a more cautious, controlling the map approach. But we've also seen teams Dreadnought, now that Genji's banned, but it's a matter of having the lethal, like a Thrall, like a Zeratul, flex between that mid-top lane and put more of that top lane pressure. So there's the difference of opinion, and when I look at Team Freedom versus a team like Simplicity, I wonder if they might try and play around that.
I do think that that is something that we should be able to expect from Simplicity, even more so with the being able to bring the team fight here. But we're going to see them bring the team fight with that first pick, Maiev, something they have been relying on the past 2 weeks pretty consistently to try and bring that team fight and have the kill potential within the 4-man. Looks really good to force the initiation, something that Simplicity can struggle with within the past. Not so much over the last game, though. This Freedom opens up here with a Dahaka and a Tyrande. Offlane priority and kill potential within the Ford. A lot of consideration here, and soft synergy between Dahaka and Tyrande.
See if Simplicity goes back into the Johanna, or whether we get the Muradin. The Muradin is when they're their most lethal. The Johanna is more of the, well, that's fine, I'll just blind that target. When you have a good Maiev player on your team and you have a Johanna, most of the time you say, I need my tank to be the initiator. I need you to make the plays. But when you have a Maiev, Maiev can be the initiator, and Johanna can simply condemn follow-up and lock them down in place a little longer. I've really liked that comp for a long time. There's so much synergy when you have a Maiev. If Maiev is the main initiator, the game looks entirely different. If you're relying on your tank, then it is a higher priority on CC in some other areas.
Comes down to, you know, the same kind of trade-off. I mean, really, with any 1-2 punch combo, right? Is the minute that you have more than one initiator, you're like, wow, this is not that hard to avoid. You know, it gets a lot more difficult to avoid whenever you have that multiple opportunities. It just becomes less linear and more forgiving in the long run. As we do get a Johanna ban here in the 3rd ban, I'm indicating that's probably in response to the fact that we got the Tyrande picked up here. Will we get a Muradin ban in response?
That's the problem, is that if Simplicity doesn't ban Muradin, I highly doubt that they're going to get Muradin. so they'll ban Medivh.
This is interesting. You could, if you do remove the Murden from that type of equation, there's still a Nubarak, so I can see you arguing like, okay, there is still a range initiation against
Or
Boss.
there's still an Arthas.
Or it's old, baby. We get ourselves the Arthas pickup here, a common pickup here in North America, starting last week.
It's been the Maiev counter.
It's the Maiev counter. It's the response we consistently see here.
It brings up an interesting point when we look at builds, because you do get a slow on the first target hit with your Sentinel at level 13, plus potentially damage reduction. But she also has movement speed for her Q targets. And Arthas lacks the mobility. We're going to see the Tyrael pickup here by King Caffeine.
This is a bit of a classic, I feel like, for King Caffeine specifically. Not really. Not really. Just in my head, one of the most profound moments he's ever had as a warrior was in response to one game we were playing against him where we had a Tyrande and a Nova stealth composition. They just got the reveal with the Tyrande and then judgment onto the Nova all day. I feel like this is a response to the Tyrande support. Be like, okay, you're going to pick it. We're just going to kill your Tyrande.
So you think maybe some judgment action?
I'm expecting to see some judgment action in this type of situation, purely based on the map too. Less team fighting, 5v5s. I can see the argument for sanctification. That's what we got last week, Warren's Cage and the Saints. But this is one of the games I wouldn't mind if we got that as well, even more so considering, you know, Arthas is actually a soft counter to the sanctification. If he survives and you survive, you're all going to have to deal with the slow afterwards, and I hate to break it to you, he's going to win that one.
And there's just so many interesting dynamics now with this support meta change. This is a game where we're not seeing Deckard. How often have I said that? Deckard's support win rate is astronomical. It's up near 60%.
And for his involvement rate, that's insane. I think that's the biggest thing to point out is he has a very good win rate, but a involvement rate that is so high that with that win rate, you put yourself in a position to be like, is this the best support we've ever had? I don't think so. I still think that original Malfurion, before all the nerfs on his rework, was the best version of a support being implemented, and the impact they've had involvement rate with their win rate cross-comparing, but she's got to be close.
Globally, an 89% involvement rate.
Good.
For Deckard.
Oh, yeah, it's better than good, but
59% win rate globally.
And normally when we see, you know, even above that, anywhere near that involvement rate, you would argue maybe it's going to be closer to the 50 or lower than the 50 based on the priority of the hero just within the meta itself.
Here's my favorite part about breaking that all down. It's almost 60%. On Battlefield of Eternity, something that you've been throwing out there about Deckard's, I guess, impact on Battlefield of Eternity. He has a 37.5% win rate on Battlefield. If you take out Battlefield of Eternity, that win rate goes over 60% for Deckard. That's how strong of a support he's been. For him to be passed over here, it's a statement.
And now, not only because of the context of that, you know, kind of stat that we have there, but also with the Tyrande implementation, I will be upset if we get equally as high Deckard Cain priority on Battlefield of Eternity based on the race capabilities both those heroes actually end up providing. Here we see an adjustment there at the level 1 though when looking at the Tyrande. Gonna go Spell Armor instead here for Collusion, making it a little bit more difficult for that Maiev. Actually, that wouldn't be the Maiev damage because most of that comes out as physical. Not crazy, right?
Seven-sided strike is percent damage. Spell Armor doesn't work there.
Yeah, I'm okay.
It's just Fan of Knives reset, but you do spec into a lot of physical talents with Maiev, and Raynor hits autos. But then you look at the alternative. The stun works after, the cleanse works after stuns. In Maiev, you get the pull. There's Yrel and Maiev, and it's after the pull, which is where you could get it. So it's not like you can cleanse the tether and then walk away. So
that's a good point.
Stun options are limited, so the change up here, that's what Tyrael compositions do, which is why we've seen heroes in the past, even post-nerfs. Tracer starts to come back because it's like, well, you can't lock me down, so what are you going to do about it?
And another thing to not underestimate now, kind of as we go through this thought process-wise and kind of digest it a little bit, Yrel has a lot of spell armor, or spell damage now that I think about it. Like, purely off of her leap alone, like, that is a large portion of her damage output beyond the sustain and kind of survivability that does provide. We're looking at the lanes for now here. Control from Simplicity both on top and bottom. Collapse around Team Freedom. Zugrug looking for the reveal. Tiger's able to make it out. Cap's going to go get the follow-up on Eldruins. Good dodge onto the Howling Blast. Might throw him down to help K1 Pro try to get the tether. Zugrug follows him in. Nothing really too successful for either side as the wet noodle fight continues. Collusion's going to be the focus now. Lunar Flare goes down. K1 Pro didn't get the tether before the vault. I don't know if he had it off cooldown, but there goes the leap in. Tiger JK gets interrupted. Arthas first to drop. Posty throwing the damage onto Collusion. Now Nasmus on an island. There's the burrow. Passive down. Another kill here. And Dragonite, I feel like. Nope, not Dragonite. Thrall denies it on bottom, but great job from Simplicity.
Team Freedom elected to stay in a majority of that, even running all the way into the tower to absorb shots to try and keep the lockdown. Lutano trying to get some of the damage in, unable to do so in terms of confirming a kill. So Simplicity with the early double is a very good start for them in this situation. That is a support getting in the DK.
In this composition, I would say that's not too big of a setback, not only because of the Tyrael, but then also just based on the fact that it's a Karazim, like he doesn't have the best healing output here. So the fact that early Dragonite over to Simplicity, great job here for them, getting this tempo and momentum into their favor. Important thing here, though, is keep it up, as this is a very different opening from the last game. One thing, I guess, that I do want to bring back here towards the Spell Armor opportunity when we're considering, like, versus Maiev. One of the reasons I didn't look at Maiev as, like, that is a high Spell Armor is because I personally feel like a lot of her damage comes from that 4, and the resets on the level 4 having that AoE damage, and it's purely physical, which is going to make that a little bit more difficult. So I do think even if the K1 Pro resets come in, I feel like Maiev wins that trade, even with the talent adjustment here for Collusion. It's just something to look at now that we've got ourselves Neutronda.
There's the boot back. Just able to dodge that. I think he got stunned during the first initial dash attempt. Second one, able to make it.
You see the pickup there at level 7 for Simplicity. No standard, or no deviation really from anybody too far there. Seems to be the same here for Team Freedom as Tronda build sitting the exact same that it was before. We did not get the Seeker pickup here in this game, but there also is no Sergeant Hammer on the other side.
What's fun was earlier in EU, there was a Li Ming game on Battlefield of Eternity, no hammer, but we did get Triumvirate for that cooldown reduction on that orb. That's a map where I've always wondered if it would come out regardless of a hammer. We saw that earlier.
Yeah.
I think they've been watching some North American action because we've been heavy in that. With the changes or the adaptation towards Sergeant Hammer, I think everybody expected that, but we started seeing it outside of the Sergeant Hammer compositions lately here in North America.
Howling Blast not able to land there. One thing to keep in mind here, J-How, is because we did get the Rhine at level 1, there's never going to be that extended Howling Blast setup. Howling Blast is always going to be that exact same range. Yeah. And there is a lot of mobility on Simplicity, so much so that I don't see a world outside of Simplicity volunteering for the team fight that Arthas really has that, ooh, you know, this is the Howling Blast that turns around these fights.
I can understand the block charges. The amount of auto attacks that are going to come out from Simplicity, including the level 7 talent from Tyrael, which gives you more attack speed. That's a lot of attacks coming your way in very rapid succession. And there are some coming out against Yoda. There's going to be another kill for Simplicity, stretching their lead to a full level and rounding level 10 momentarily at a perfect time as it's 5 seconds away from the Shrine's activate.
And we're about to find out if we get our Sanctification or the Judgment. It's going to be the Sanct, so kicking it like they did last week here for Simplicity. The Warden's Cage all in, not for picks. So we'll see if they get that all in here. Great body blocks by King Caffeine. K1 Pro with the follow-up tether. I can tell you this much, Arthas felt all sides of that 7-sided strike. Just each one of them, my goodness.
Zuna just needs to get in position for a momentary knockback so that he can get control of this. It will only take a second, but the collapse is going to be here. Ardent Defender would still be available. Feeding Frenzy makes it tricky. You mentioned another soft synergy. You get the drag, Feeding Frenzy, then the follow-up on that.
Oh, Zuna half a second away from getting the interrupt on that brush stock. That would have led to...
And he went bottom.
Yeah, that would have led to a kill and a Dragonite for sure if he got that interrupt. So close. But Nasmus makes it out. Will he make it out of this? Tether 1 coming in.
7-sided 3 seconds.
Ooh. Close, but no cigar here. Freedom now hitting 10s. What heroics are we going to see coming out from them? It is the Sundering. Everybody else sticking to the norm. It's actually going to be the Shadowstalk this game, though. See how that comes online here for Freedom. Shadowstalk is an amazing late-game Dragonshire tool. We'll talk about it later.
Dread Leeming has been super aggressive, trying to get those Calamity kills, those resets, or even get some damage in. I'm watching Lutano on the minimap jumping in to no avail so far.
I would really love to see Freedom break Fog and try and get an initiation with that in some way, shape, or form. Find out. Illusion under pressure. There's the Shadowstalk coming in. The Sundering landing onto two-man root. 7-sided goes down, and there goes the Ardent Defender. K1 Pro in a bad spot as he gets the Warden's Cage out. Huge hammer there from Zuna. Pushes 4 members of Freedom against the wall. Howling Blast goes in. K1 Pro starts the channel. Dragonite online, but look at what cost. Simplicity lose 1 here. King Caffeine down on the Tyrael. See if they lose another.
Gonna try and follow up on this. Nazmus very low. They're just gonna burrow under. Does have the essence. Can they get enough burst damage in? Nazmus trying to walk away. The healing comes in. The DK is getting obliterated.
Yeah.
Between that Hunter's Mark. Dreadnought, that is one of the fastest DKs I've ever seen fall.
I mean, I was gonna ask you, hey Jay, do you remember the Dragonite? Because I don't.
For people that aren't always aware, vehicles in the game do count as heroic targets. So there are some things that don't work in terms of some damage, but a Hunter's Mark definitely does.
And it amplifies the rate at which that thing goes down very, very fast. It is only an 8-minute Dragonite, so it should be noted it wasn't the strongest Dragonite we've ever seen, but when we look at late-game Dragon Knights itself, you can look at this game as Freedom as long as they have the Tyrande available and a lot of single-target damage, which they very much do. Those Dragon Knights aren't going to be that high impact. This is not the first time this approach, if you will, has been chosen. It used to be in the past, actually, you would take Tyrande and Nazebo because of their damage to a vehicle and single targets, 1 vulnerability plus a late-game spider, DK's dead 100% of the time.
One of my favorite changes was when they made vehicles unstoppable, because we started to get a lot of control. I think it was around this time last year because Kel'Thuzad came out and was chaining everybody. You were getting kicked everywhere as a vehicle. The one thing after that that became the strongest thing in the game, which not in HGC, but it became one of the strongest utility things in the game, was the Garden Terror on Garden of Terror.
Yeah.
But we have a Garden of Terror rework coming in terms of the map. If you guys missed that, there's a lot of really cool content the last few days between the rework and the Garden of Terror. It's all over the Blizzard social media. I, for one, am excited. We'll probably talk about this another time, but the Garden changes look really cool. Excited to see how that plays out. But for now, it's double camp for Simplicity as they push down with the 13 talent tier advantage and double siege shots.
Mercenary advantage here for Simplicity, not something we can say too often. There is the Lunar Flare going to go down just to try and rid of those Giants faster. K1 Pro found himself a tether, but nobody going to pull the trigger here yet as we're 19 seconds out from the next Shrine phase. Simplicity look like they have gotten what they wanted here over bottom through that keep front wall and now look to back it out. Freedom is now at a turning point, I feel, in Dragonshire now that they've got the 13 talents here in this next phase. They need to find a way to make this composition function. Otherwise, Simplicity is just going to keep getting that macro Dragonshire pressure and keep winning when it comes to these kills.
Everybody's rotating up here to the top. Artha snipping out the mid bush. Does trade glances with Hosty on that Rainer. Lane control with that camp still being pushed out in favor of Team Freedom. I wondered if we would get the movement speed, instead the harsh Moonlight. Negative armor can only go to -25, so we're seeing the Dark Swarm, that's -10, coupled with the Tyrande. They can follow that up. It's the max -25 they could get in a team fight.
Simplicity keeping themselves here towards top. Freedom have the global advantage, so they can send Dahaka towards the bottom lane and then reinitiate on the top half of the battleground. So not going to go for a Howling Blast attempt there. Dahaka didn't pick up bottom shrine either immediately here. So it's kind of a bamboozle approach, if you will, for Freedom on the top half. Arthas and friends showing though, so it's giving too much information for it to be a major play here. It's just delaying that Dragonite opportunity. Freedom, you can tell, they're feeling this pressure, J-How.
Simplicity will extend their lead, taking down that fort, increases their race towards 16. So if they're feeling the pressure now, in about 30, 45 seconds when they're looking up and it's 16, it'll actually be quicker than that. They're looking at 16, that pressure is only going to get amplified, but it's up to Simplicity. We've seen clever rotations out using the Dahaka from Team Freedom. It's up to Simplicity to take advantage of that 16. See if they can manage.
This would be a great place.
This Holy Ground choke points
Not
right
only
here.
Holy Ground, 7-sided is such a good setup in these type of chokes. There you go, Wave 100 Fists. Here's the 7-sided. A lot of value there. Zugrog ends up surviving. The Lunar Flare going down. K1 Pro has to drop the vault, but Simplicity have 2 members on the backside. There's the Holy Ground. There's the Sanctification. Jay, how that was textbook here from Simplicity, and they're not done.
They're going to track down Collusion here. There's no way he makes it out alive. But I believe, I was trying to keep an eye on that top part. I believe Isolation missed onto that Tiro. He tried to surprise him. He had vision coming from the mid lane into the push. He tried to hit him blindly so that he couldn't dodge it. And I believe it was just outside of max range. We'd have to take a second look at that. But if that's not available, that is something we can actually see. Watch the top right of your screen. You can see Nasmus pathing up.
Oh, yeah.
Missed the Isolation.
It wasn't even totally necessarily a miss there. If King Caffeine was not interrupted at all in his movement, that Isolation connects at mass range. But a body block coming out from Li Ming, sidestepping 2 seconds and getting distracted there means that's an Isolation that really only, you know, catches itself some nice breeze.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to take another look at that. That might have... it still would have been hard for Team Freedom to walk away from that. So we're going to see the drag will delay this momentarily. Simplicity trying to confirm a DK. It's 13.5 minutes in, and I think it's important to note is we'll see if Nasmus can, highly unlikely, makes it out of here. But you mentioned this part earlier, Dreadnought, is we're actually seeing on the mini-map, I was watching Kerosene making sure to dodge the owl or block the owl if it came in. But you mentioned the Hunter's Mark. The Hunter's Mark reducing this. This is only a 13-minute DK. It's not exactly you can walk up to core and end the game.
Yeah, you very much can. And so now it's in a tough position here. One thing we do have to consider, though, Karazim, one of the better sieging supports. Arn Defender, pretty good on the core. Raynor, one of the better ones on the core. And Sanctification. So Tyrael is going to suicide this Dragonite as, not as fast as possible, but with reasonably fast, and then Sanked into an all-in afterwards. They want this Dragonite to die after the core falls to about 80%. Bazuna gonna fall low. 7-sided strike ends up going down. Simplicity is trying to end this game. 14 minutes in here. The shielding on the core is still there as the Hunter's Mark goes down. Sanctification is not gonna be here, and that is not the damage they wanted, J-How. Isolation is there, and things are falling apart for Simplicity.
Now they're not able to get there. The Eldruins goes out, but K1 Pro goes back in, trying to get the lockdown, trying to get any type of kill, but he's gonna go down. There's reset number 1 for Lutano going in, but he's low on mana. See if he can get any type of follow-up. Nice knockback there by Zuna. Things starting to dodge. Tiger JK trying to make some plays of his own, does get the trade out there and dashes out. If you ever wondered why we talk about Tiger JK on Karazim, that is right there. The man has no fear.
He might not be done either. He has enough mana to go in and get a kill onto Collusion or Lutano. Lutano falling very low. There's the setup as the follow-up to the Holy or Eldruins. Tiger, if he goes in, this is going to be a problem. He finds Yoda. Punch set number 1, 2, and that is good night. Thrall has gone down, but the drag onto King Caffeine, he is falling very low. Tiger JK goes back in onto Lutano, lays down the 7-sided. Not enough kills to get the damage onto Collusion, but a reset over to Lutano. 2-man Raw Lunar Flare out from Collusion, and Simplicity now are going to lose 4 members to 2, a 5th possibly here as Hosty drops.
This is wild. The distraction by the Arthas. My favorite part about that Arthas was we saw the tether from Maiev. This was before it all broke down. We saw the tether on Maiev and the 7-sided strike ring. He towed that line and didn't eat that damage, and it was one of the things that bought enough time. I think some miscommunication in terms of the approach. I liked what you said. Get on there, get the shields down, get it down enough. You have so much damage potentially coming out. But a minor distraction by Team Freedom keeps them in the game.
Yeah, the biggest thing to indicate there for Simplicity as to why that went so sour with the core approach, at least. The skirmishing, there's a whole nother case that you got to look at the fine print, if you will, in those type of situations. But it was the Dragonite separation from everybody else. Everyone else was so concerned about setting up for those kills and not focusing in. There was not enough damage on the core. And even more so, when the Dragonite dies, what was the first thing we expected? It's the Synced follow-up. Everyone's gone. So Eldruins had to be used. Everybody had to back out. And it was Freedom forcing them off the core, mixed with a bit of miscommunication there for Simplicity that led to that delay and this Dragonite.
Shades of Towers of Doom there. They had enough members on the battleground and what seemed like enough utility to get through there. Instead, they'll give up the DK. Almost level 20 will make it an easier defense.
Anybody,
if they survive it.
Yeah, wondering what Towers of Doom, hold on, we're alluding to was the backdoor boss, if you will, that kind of was given up by Simplicity macro-wise last time we got them in a series. Cap falling low. It's enough for a kill there. Good Howling Blast all in from Team Freedom. And suddenly the counter snowball feels like it's beginning, J-How.
Siege Giants will be here to empower this DK. One more kill, and this will go. Right now, Simplicity can hold. They might give up a keep. They would like to hold on to it. But if they give up a kill and Zugrug lands something once this wall goes down, and there's a kill, it might be game over.
And Toronto
Simplicity has to be careful.
Is one of the best at making that happen. They do end up landing the stun onto Hosty there, but nobody trying to get the follow-up. Keep falling pretty low now, 50%, as it's still the focus here for Freedom. Only 11% remains on their Dragonite, 20 seconds out. This is one of those moments I'd actually like to see an early cancellation on the Dragonite after that well goes down and immediately pick up those Giants in the bottom left. Tyrael will not be there, so painting the battleground into your favor and then manipulating a siege on top or mid after would really be able to help out. Instead, Freedom going to look to do the standard I feel like that we see in this situation more often than not, just focus on another keep front wall.
Any big team fight from here on out could decide this game. Catapult's dead even in the bottom lane. We've already seen the plays made from Tiger JK. He's going into Epiphany at level 20. Activate that, get some more dashes out with his Q. Going away of the 100 Fists, something to play around. Both teams sniffing it out. King Caffeine using that smite, enough to walk away.
K1's on an island though. He's not with the rest of the team. He's going to come in with a massive flank in a moment here as we see the Shadowstalk actually coming out with the 7-sided strike. Drag's going to land there. Sanctification hitting 3 members of Simplicity here as they're now on the retreat. Freedom getting pulled back by the Warren's Cage.
Trying to dig in.
Can he hit the Howling Blast? Can he hit the drag? The knockback there from Raynor, but it comes at the cost there of that Lunar Flare. Yoda aggressing. Another Howling Blast off cooldown in a fraction of a second. J-House, Simplicity somehow made it out of that.
It wasn't easy. That
Definitely showed some hustle.
That first route that missed, it nipped the wings of Tyrael and King Caffeine on his way out. Those heals were on it. Zugrug walks forward. No army, so highly unlikely they would take that fight there.
K1 is going to have to drop a vault here to make it out of that. There it is, but he lands on top of the Howling Blast. Good job by Hosty and Zuna trying to give him a little bit of breathing room. We see the Sephiroths and the Ardent Defender used as Holy Ground gets Simplicity room, but those are cooldowns that we cannot see being used this late in the game, 20 seconds out from a Dragonite, if Simplicity wants to be competitive around this next DK phase.
2-minute cooldown on that Ardent Defender, so a major tool that will not be available as we're 5 seconds away from that Shrine phase. Global advantage in favor of Team Freedom. Catapults neutral in that bottom lane, but trying to control that vision is Team Freedom with this camp. They already have that lane control. They're parked here in the middle, have the Rainer's Raider on one side, sniffing out Zugrug. See if they try and rip a fight. Hosty.
Howling Blast, no Cleansing Touch, no Sanctification. Job's done. Hosty out of here. Freedom find the first pickup, but does it come at the cost of collusion as there's a lot of damage coming out from Tiger JK there. 7-sided goes down, but when he comes out, he has no HP. He gets the dash onto Zuna. K1 Pro trying to get kills onto collusion, but he gets the double heal. There's the Sanctification, but it is all but over at this point here. J-How, collusion and friends look like they're going to be able to set up another kill here onto Zuna, and with 3 members of Simplicity dead, likely a Dragonite.
That DK should be enough at this point of the game. If King Caffeine falls, see if he has one more juke in him. Nice death coil though, that's enough. 4 members down on the side of Simplicity. Nasmus will move over onto this Shrine. The DK and 4 members alive, 3 members to join the DK. Siege Giant already at the bottom. Should be enough for Team Freedom to close out game number 2.
Trying to figure out if there would be any major outlier opportunity, but without the Warden's Cage available, it does feel like that might be too much. We do have K1 Pro back. Giants already starting here with that catapult towards the shielding on the core. K1 Pro, tether number 1, gonna get interrupted. Burrowing Claws, or Tunneling Claws, also helping Simplicity. We see the Isolation try to come out there for a moment, not gonna land, but the Dragonite is too much here, J-How. Game number 2 on Dragonshire, going over to Freedom, now 1 game away from winning this series.
It's been wild. Simplicity has brought the fight every step of the way. In that mid-game, they've done it through team fighting, but closing it out has been difficult.
Yeah, it has been very difficult. And to be frank, this is a roster of players, not necessarily the entirety of it, but definitely when looking at King Caffeine, K1, and even certain rosters of Zuna have struggled with late-game decision-making. And it didn't expect it to come to light here, maybe at the level at which it is, but I can't help but feel like even though we're looking at Freedom up 2 games, I'm still more impressed with what we've gotten from Simplicity here.
It's very important when we look at not just the playoffs, but the bottom 2 teams for Crucible. You and I touched on this last week. For Simplicity, they don't always just have to win the series. Winning a series would help their odds of getting into playoffs tremendously. But it's also game wins that's very important for them, because LFM will be playing later this weekend. And depending on how some of those losses come in, hopefully we can take a look at that shortly. But there is a lot of potential if Simplicity just picks up game wins. And these have to hurt in that department.
Yeah, they definitely do feel like it could be a pretty big emotional setback, but I also feel like it might be one of those opportunities where you can be like, it gives you that hope. You're like, wait a minute, we didn't know if we would be able to get to this level. We were in control at moments of this game. We had very obvious win conditions available at specific moments. Yes, maybe the execution not necessarily there quite yet, but I can't help but feel like identifying that opportunity is even greater than maybe the execution itself here. So I do wonder, especially with the veteran roster that we get from them, if they can keep it together and maybe even find a game here against Freedom and it not be game number 1.
The vehicle maps have always seemed to be a crux of this team. And I'd like to run it back to see how that did unfold. Unfortunately for Simplicity, they were unable to take down game number 2. Team Freedom finds themselves up 2-0. We're going to see if they can close out this series or whether Simplicity can fight back. We're going to commercial. We'll be right back.